Thanks everybody for joining today. And I'm here in Imagine. And today's theme is persistence, which is, I think, for some people, a good, powerful, positive word. Sorry. And then I think maybe for others it can be an intimidating word. So I'm curious to hear what people think about it, whether you have stories about persistence, something that worked, something that didn't work, problems, anything you want to share.
Yeah, interesting persistence.
Yeah.
So I guess for me, the first thing that comes to mind is when I was younger, I was doing a lot of like music stuff and a lot of like drawing stuff, and people would talk to me about what their perception of talent was. And to them, talent was innate. It was something that um, something that people are just born with, and they're just naturally good at things. They just pick things up, and it's easier for them to do stuff. And I'm like, well, it's kind of true, but really the what I perceive talent to be is it's a form of persistence. It's you're able to do things without tiring, or you can do things with an extreme focus, where you're almost like you're completely fixated on it. So you're able to continue to do it without tiring. That kind of persistence that kind of pushes people a little bit further. And um, it's not always present in every part of life. A lot of times you lack persistence where you don't want to. Oh, what is that? I've never seen that one before. Sorry, I'm in relaxed and I see this like huge, very finny creature.
Oh, I think I know what you're saying. Finny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got like it looks like it's got six fins, four along each or two along each side, and then like two at the top. It's almost like plesiosaur like.
Yeah. Uh,
Very
I
cool.
think if I know the one you're talking about, I think it's called the Hexasaura.
Oh, yeah, it's very cool. But no, that was just my little anecdote on persistence, just kind of off the top.
Uh, yeah, I mean, talent is a thing. Sorry about just I had to do something, so I had to take off the headset. Um, Yeah, I would say that talent for me is I agree with you, but I do have to say that I was sort of saying the same thing as you just did for many years. Like, yeah, talent is really persistence.
Hmm.
Um, but it's like you may not like what I'm gonna say, but I think in the end, it's like if you have it, then you think, it's like one of those things that when you have it, when you have the talent, you do have to still work hard, and I think it looks to us, if we do have talent in something, that it was just the hard work. But I came to basically acknowledge after many years that of course, it's a lot of hard work, and you never get anywhere without it. But um, I did have a head start. I have to admit that.
Yeah, I guess it's sort of like um I guess in another way it's like we're running with more gas than other people. We have that additional, yeah, it's definitely three on each side. Now I'm seeing it like up close. It is definitely the Hexasaur.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. But yeah, it's like having additional capacity to do things, which that is, I didn't earn it. I just kind of like have it, which is, it helps with the hard work tremendously. It's like operating on a full tank where other people have, half or a quarter tank in some things, some areas.
And you also get praise early on, right? Because
Right.
you have the praise you get, but you get the praise, you go like, well, I'm going to do more of that. So it does sort of echo with hard work and persistence, which is absolutely needed.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, but I used to get annoyed when people told me, as an animator, as a draftsman, when people said, "Oh, you're so talented." It's like, what do you mean I'm talented? You're basically saying that I just got it out of nowhere. I worked my butt off. Uh,
Yeah, and I mean, right. And
It's
it is work, but it's
but
also, it's the other stuff. It's the fact that having that sort of self-propulsion drive that's built in, it's like, oh yeah, this is, and in another way, I didn't have to work to do the work, you know.
yeah.
I was able to do the work without that, these hindrances.
hmm, it's interesting. Like in my mind, I think I thought I knew what the word persistence meant, but when we started talking about it, I was like, what does this word mean? Like when I really thought about it, I thought, do I really know what persistence means? So then I looked up one of the definitions just to kind of like frame it in my mind better. Because sometimes if you can't explain it to someone else, then you don't know it well enough. And I was thinking, like, if
Right.
I tried to explain it to someone else, I don't think I could really give them a clear understanding of it. And this description that I looked up, this is from Britannica, but it says the quality that allows someone to continue doing something or trying to do something, even though it is difficult or opposed by other people. And I think that's an interesting, for me, that they're interesting because there's multiple layers there, that it's like this, the quality that allows somebody to continue doing something is one thing, but then or trying to do something, even though it's difficult. So like sometimes that's the hard part about persistence, I think, is when you're trying to do something, but you just don't feel like you've succeeded at it yet. And still sticking with it, even though, you haven't reached, what is success for you or what other people think success is or something like that. And then, that last component of like, when it's opposed by other people, whether it's like, people in your life saying, why are you doing that? You should be doing something else or whatever. And it's kind of interesting. Like to me, there's multiple layers there, being persistent. And sometimes when you started talking, Dora, like the idea of persistence being a positive thing, sometimes people are persistent in things that maybe they should have let go of a long time ago because it's not working or something. Like, there's a classic conversation on the Shark Tank by Kevin O'Leary, who's always like, you should take this in the backyard and kill it, or like give this thing up, or you should have, you guys should have been done with this a long time ago, that kind of thing too. And, when is it, that's, I think, one of the hard challenges is like when to know when to continue to be persistent and when to, pivot or change or shift to something else. So it's an interesting conversation. Like there's a bit of an insecurity in being persistent and when it hasn't come to that, fruition or the results or the end, the success that you're looking for.
I
There's a lot of sunken cost fallacy stuff that goes along with that too, where it's, you're
Mhm.
not sure, like you said, whether to give it up or if it's worth it. That sort of
Yeah,
limbo. Yeah, I totally
yeah.
agree.
Oh yeah,
I
some cost is a great reference there too, right? Because you've invested so much time and energy, and sometimes it feels like because you've done that, you should keep doing it, right? And maybe that's true sometimes, and maybe it's not other times, and that's where we get stuck.
I told you last time Kevin was here, I think I told you about workflow, about the book that I wrote.
Yes, yes, you did.
Right. Mhm.
But and that was something I worked on for, get ready for it, 15 years. So for 15 years, I worked on this
Wow. Yeah.
book. And it had all sorts of different, it wasn't like 15 years straight. I, came into it and I left it for a year because I was doing an interesting project. I was directing, I couldn't write, all that stuff. And then I published it in different languages and in different forms. I made a course. So, but it was all towards this one book that ended up being published under the name Workflow. And I had for almost the entire period, I had this like, am I doing the right thing? Like, should I persist or should I let it go? And like there's no telling. I think in the end, really, first of all, it's just a decision. It's like you say, you know how you say you only fail when you actually gave up, right? As long as you keep trying, you haven't failed yet. So it's really a decision that we take, whether to call it, okay, I failed now, or whether to call it, I'm persisting. But also I want to say it's in the end result. It's like, what's the difference between being brave and being stupid? Mostly it's just the end result. If you did something crazy and it worked, then you're the genius and we're brave to do it. And if it fails, you're stupid. So it's
Yeah, the
Speaking of,
persist in what, I guess, is the other thing too, right? Like persist to what degree or what point? Like there's sometimes when perfection gets in the way and you persist, on perfecting something when it could have, been shipped earlier or something like that too. Not that that's what I'm saying about the book, but I'm just like, I was hearing you say that and I was thinking like how, I've been working on a project for a while and I think about how, should I have shipped this earlier? Like, did I hold it too long? There's a kind of a saying in the startup world, if you're not embarrassed by it, you waited too long to ship it or something.
yeah.
And
oh,
that's a kind of a funny saying on the lean side of startup stuff. It's like get it out in the world where people can engage with it before you feel like you've got it perfected because you might not be building the right thing or something like that. And so it's kind of interesting to kind of explore persisting in different ways. Just this conversation. I don't think I would have thought about these things in those way in these ways. So yeah.
that's speaking of that's awesome and excellent sort of dialogue in there because I'd never thought about that before. My friend is currently working on a startup, and
Hmm.
he's been writing this book for I think 6-ish years, 6 or 7 years. And it's a
Mhm.
setting, like an RPG setting. So he's building this huge book. And oh my God, that thing got really close to me. Hey. Um, yeah. But he's been writing this book for probably 6 or 7 years. And every time I check in with him on it, he's doing something else to it. Like I recently
Yeah.
checked in with him and I'm like, hey, what are you working on now? He's like, hey, I'm working on plate tectonics for my world. I'm like, why? Why are you doing that? This is it's a I kind of like broke it down for him. I'm like, listen, this is a book that encompasses humanity during a specific period in time.
Mm,
This is the whole of human history that we know of. We only go back like 25,000 years. So like
mm.
I can't imagine it being that much more in depth than our history. Like even if we went back like 40,000 years, there's no noticeable plate tectonic differences. You're not like seeing shifting landmass until you're going to like millions of years. And then he's like, well, it's not just going to be that though. He wants to kind of expand it into like a Warhammer type universe. And I'm like, when will
Mm.
it stop? When when will you when will you reach a point? I guess because he's starting to use this experimental software that like geologists in Australia are using to like map their actual plate tectonics there, like through studies and stuff. And
Mm.
he's reverse engineering it to make it work for this fake book about a like a D&D setting essentially.
Right.
And I'm like, man, why? And I think part of it is I don't think he's ever going to be done. I don't think he really wants to
Yeah.
be.
Yeah, so that brings up a very, very interesting topic, which I would call that persistence as a type of procrastination,
Ah,
which
Yeah.
which is a thing. It's a thing. It's like as long as I work on it, nobody can say I'm lazy. Nobody can say I'm not doing the work, but I'm not doing the difficult thing or the scary thing, which is to actually publish and see if anybody, cares. Um,
N-
and I've
now
seen
have to make sure he doesn't find this YouTube video.
what's that?
Now I have to make sure he doesn't find this YouTube video.
Yeah.
um, and so I wanted to also say, yeah. So as a teacher, I saw that. Wow, this is really nice. I've never seen this. Um, as a teacher, I saw that with some students. So some students, and I'm sure you guys know people like that as well, that just study and study and study, and they just kind of get stuck in that. I think it kind of comes from the same place.
Yeah, one of the things is like, you know, your audience or your medium or your goal, you know, it could be reward, like that kind of persistence can be rewarded for the right audience, for the right people. You know, it's hard to say, and I think that's the biggest the biggest sort of disconnect sometimes is where are you, you know, where are you going with it? I think that's when you look at your goal, persistence, and you know how far you go, you know, can you shoot past the goal? And I think I keep referencing The Office on these these floats because Sharice, my wife, has been watching The Office a lot, and I'll watch some episodes with her. And there's all these funny scenarios, and in the one episode, Andy's like, I followed my heart, and it took me all the way to the coast. So he went all the way to the coast of Florida, but then he realized where he was really going was, you know, was actually 200 miles inland. It is like he's like the heart map isn't always right, you know, like it was kind of it was kind
Yeah.
of funny, like not bad for a heart map though. He's like, you know, and it just, I don't know, it's so silly, but it kind of catches me because
Yeah.
that whole concept of, I mean, I think sometimes we think we know where we're going, and you know, sometimes our passion, you know, there's I forget who it was that said this, but they're talking about, you know, for every mile we go, you know, there's two more, you know, we want to go two more or something like this. If you're in your, you know, in your passion, in your area of interest and stuff, it's like, you know, you don't want the journey to end. Whereas like in other kinds of journeys, it's like, is there, oh, are we there yet? Like, what's happening? You know, it's like, so if you're in your, you know, in your hobby or your passion or interest, you got to sometimes be careful that you're not just doing that, like you said, like the busy work or procrastination work, and you're not, you know, and the rubber meets the road. Like Seth Godin talks about, like it's not art until somebody experiences it or something like that. Like, you know, your art is not art until it's in the world or something. And I think like I'm working on a software project, the same sort of thing. Like I don't know sometimes. I feel like I'm on the right path. I'm building the right thing, but I feel like I could have put it out there earlier and got more feedback and more insight. But I also like what I'm building, and I feel like I'm making something for myself that, and hopefully other people will also be like, I feel like I'm customer number one sort of thing. But at the same time, there's that question of persistence. Like persisting is good. I've been continuing to work on this, even though it's, you know, even though I don't have an audience, even though there's people not people using it. But at some point it has to hit, you know, has to meet the public where someone tries it and people are using it. And that has been an interesting experience because I've been doing user interviews recently, and you know, that's the point. Do you give up when you get bad feedback, or do you take the next, you know, you take the next step and shape it and continue to improve on it? And I think, you know, persistence is about that. Like when it gets tough, when it gets difficult, are you still going? You know, are you still moving? And even if, you know, the decision is a completely different decision, you know, picking up and moving in that different direction or whatever. So yeah, persistence kind of, we see it as one thing or one way to show up, but I think there's a lot of, you know, ways that persistence, you know, can, you know, we have to look at how persistence works and what's the best way to be persistent in this particular situation or something.
Yeah. It's like I always say, it's fine if people want to just kind of listen and chill, but I just want to make sure that Archie and Jesse, if you know, you have a chance, because I think we're
Hey guys, I just arrived as well. It's good to be here. I'm floating through float for the first time as we speak.
Yay, that's awesome.
Excellent.
Hey, Fraser.
nice. So where are you? Which area are you on?
I'm in the intro world.
Okay.
Which one? Sorry, I missed it.
Intro,
Intro?
he said intro.
Oh,
Introduction.
intro. Oh, so it's your very first try, actually. Well,
That's
intro
cool.
has
I installed Float a long time ago, and I just got so many apps that I've never opened. It just went in this with all of those.
Well, that's great. So is this your actual first time ever?
That's that's cool.
Yes.
Oh, that's amazing. That's
That's awesome. We're on the maiden voyage.
let's have more criticism. Let's hear it
Cool.
all.
Do you have any thoughts on persistence, Fraser?
Sorry, guys. I'm also juggling some babies. Okay,
Oh.
go. I'll be
Yeah,
back
no
in a
worries,
minute.
no worries.
No worries, you're very persistent over there.
I think one of the coolest things that we've kind of touched on a couple of times when we're talking about persistence and the various stories and books and projects that we've been talking about, kind of the cool thing about it is that each of these, like, persistence in itself implies that it takes time, like it occurs over a long period of time. You're doing things over a long period of time, or persevering through things for a long period of time. So, like, all these projects are affected by time in a way. Like,
Mhm.
nothing exists in a state of permanence. Everything is touched by time and the way that we perceive it as we move through time. So it's like the person that you were when you started writing the book 15 years before you finished it
Mm.
is not the same person that you were even a quarter of the way through. You continue to kind of like change, and that continues to feed into that into the project. One of those things where the project sort of takes on a life of its own. But the life is the way that your world has changed in the interim between when you started and when you finished.
Right.
So I think a part of that persistence is just being able to catalog that time. And so the project is journeying through both time and progress, like you see the progression, but you also see the culmination of everything in between.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think every project, especially something this long, which by the way was never intended to be that long. I think I'm just seeing this Texasora thing, and I'm seeing it for the first time here like this, and
Oh,
I'm
cool.
actually like it a lot. So I think every project which is that long, it's actually a type of a relationship, and when I and so as you say, when you change through it, that's true, and that kind of also make you make changes because you're thinking about it differently now than 5 years ago. Obviously, it's a long time, but when I decided to let it go in the end, it was published. It's out there, but the price is too high, and I sort of like I faced a decision. You know, do I go into a whole battle where I take the book out of the publisher and all that? I try again, or do I let it go? And I had to make the decision. Look, I invested too much in this at this point. There are
Mm.
other things in the world. There are other challenges. I have to move on. And it was very much like a breakup after 15 years. It was really like
Yeah.
a lot of grief there.
Do you feel like your view on projects like that, like the writing of a book and that sort of nature, do you feel like that maybe had an effect on you and how you move through that, how you have you said that the book is on workflow, or it's called workflow.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it affected the way that you see your workflow, or that it changed, that your workflow has changed even after the book?
It didn't change. I think the ideas were pretty solid. Part of the 15 years were really developing. So what I was trying to do is this uh, crazy thing, which is apparently that's what I know how to do, crazy stuff. If it's easy, I'm not interested. So the idea was to write a book about creativity as a standalone skill. So what I was trying to do is to go, okay, if we could learn to be successful as creators one time, and we could really break it down to how do you do it, not just the ideas, because usually it's about people are talking about creativity, they think about the ideas, but no, but also the steps that you take, uh, uh, the stages that you take I was seeing a lot of parallels between different art forms that I was involved in over the years. I was like, this is really the same thing. Everything. So if we learn it one time, then you know it. You can take it from sculpting to writing to animation to music. You can just use the same technique over and over again for everything. And so I had to really kind of come up with even a like a whole language of how do you talk about those core principles that are kind of almost like the part of the way the brain works. So it took a lot of time to just really distill this information and finding a way to break it down in such a because it's the whole thing is very circular, right? It's like you need some of the concept that you're going to talk about later. You need them to understand about what you're talking about now. So it's it was just a very challenging thing to even figure out how to do. And I'm proud of I think it was successful. But so I think yeah, a lot of it was just evolving, not changing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I got you.
But
Yes.
it's an interesting question because it's a book about the creative process, and of course the creative process itself was a thing for this book, and sometimes I solved it with the methods of the book. And sometimes I was feeling really stupid because I'm writing about a mistake while making the mistake.
Mhm. I think you're talking with your hands. I have this feeling like you're talking with your hands because I see the way the headset is bouncing around a little bit in this live stream. I'm just like, I have the Quest Pro on, so I'm like peeking through the gap to see your stream at the same time as mine. And it's really interesting to see, how different, how the same places are so different with small changes or with, different changes. So
Oh, that's interesting. I've never had that experience.
yeah, so like
Yeah,
I'm floating like completely. It's not quite the same now, but there was a point in time when we were floating through a section of like big tall rock pillars, and you had like I could see we're in the exact same type of scene, but it was like so there's a lot of strong like high pillars on either side, but you had like more of the like rockfish than I'd hit or whatever, and like different stuff. And so it was kind of interesting to see the alternate universes sort of at the same time. It was kind of cool.
the
Um,
parallel voyages thing from last
yeah,
time.
parallel voyages, yes. And but interestingly, some of the stuff you're saying, I was trying to find an entry point for the conversation to come back to something you said at the beginning, which was like, how it can be frustrating when someone says like, oh, you're so talented. And like I've seen that many times where even people saying to some famous artists, I don't remember who it was now, but it's probably, someone from, like a pianist or somebody who's done a lot of I can't remember who it was now. My mind is like thinking it was somebody who's written like symphonies and stuff. And they're like talking about the same thing you're saying. They were on the other side of it saying, no, that was like a lot of work or whatever. And you're like, well, there's some talent, it's like the talent and the work and how those two kind of engage with each other. I don't know where I am right now, but the whole thing just went so bright, almost like when the sun is shining in your eyes and like it kind of like obscures a lot of other things. That was really kind of interesting. I think I was in the middle of one of the clouds, but it felt almost like the sun was too bright and everything was getting faded. It was kind of cool. Um,
Interesting.
the what I was thinking about was the what some people call the luck surface, by the doing the work and being persistent, you're increasing the luck surface of your chance of success or your chance of being discovered or whatever it is, like depending on the field or the art or whatever it is. And
Oh,
that was in my mind when you were talking earlier, but I didn't get a chance to pull that in. But like, you know, to be lucky, some people look at it like, oh, like you're lucky or you're talented or whatever it is. Well, you're increasing the surface area of that luck or that talent or whatever it is by being persistent and doing the work. And that was just an interesting thought. Like I like that term luck surface. People say that people put in the work tend to be more lucky, and like how it's funny how that is, right? Well,
Yeah.
I think in some ways that probably applies, like you've got the talent, but you put the work in, and the two combined create a larger surface area for you, for success for you or something. Whereas someone else might have a talent but doesn't put the work in, they don't get that exposure. And then there's also luck, right? Like, someone could be talented and just be in the right place at the right time, or not even be talented and be in the right place at the right time. Like there's, like I don't know anything about Bill Gates, but there's a lot to be said that he had certain privileges, he was in a certain place at a certain time, and had access to certain things, and his ability to create money and things like that. I mean, sure, some of it goes credit to him. Much credit goes to place, time, and luck, and a bunch of variety of other factors, right?
I think there is something in human nature, or maybe our society right now or something, that
Mhm.
makes us want to know if, like, if is it this or the other, right? But
Yeah.
I think we have to kind of I think it's healthy to remember that it's both. It's healthy to remember both sides. It's healthy to remember that being lucky is a thing that, sometimes you just get lucky and that's all there is to it. And it's not, you know, and oh, your, talent does exist, privilege does exist, and it's healthy to know, to not go like, oh yeah, no, I just did it with my own hands, and I have, nothing to thank for, nobody to thank for this.
Mhm.
And at the same time, it's also healthy to know that it is the hard work. It is
Yeah.
everything that you did. And if you haven't done it, you also wouldn't have been able to do it. And that's healthy to remember
Mhm.
too. So it's not either
Mhm.
or really. It's really always both of them.
Yeah.
Mostly both of
I
them.
find that very interesting. I because I use that language when I used to do like podcasts and interviews about my building in VR, because people, as for me, it feels like people are pumping me up, for what I've done.
Mhm.
Um, and I used to say that, no, I just got lucky, to have came into VR during the pandemic,
Right.
and, like found all these amazing people. And like I've always given that credit back to the people that have supported me, and like
Mhm.
pushed me along, to like turn my love for design into a business in VR. Um, but I always tell them, like it is a little bit of both. Like I
Yeah.
was very persistent. I put in, like countless hours. Like I think I was like averaging 8 to 12 hours a day, like just
Mhm.
designing things. But it was also, like during the pandemic, everybody was looking for community in different
Yeah.
spaces, odd spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're also very talented. Like you definitely have the skill and an eye and the mind for stuff that other people, not everyone is thinking the way you think or looking at things the way you look at. So it is that both or multiple things, like Doran was saying. It's not even just two
Right.
things, really. There's a variety of things going into that,
So
and maybe persistence is one of those key factors, which allows you to tap into, your talent, the timing, the luck, everything as well. Because if you didn't put the work in at that right time, then that wouldn't have happened, right?
so I
Yeah.
have a question. It's Archie, right? Speaking.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So was it hard? Was it more? I'm sure it was also hard, and I'm sure it was also fun. What was it more like? Was it more persistence? I got to do it. This is something I need.
Oh, I've never had that.
Fun. Get my hands on.
Yeah. I've always created a business around what I love at that time.
Mm.
So I've gone through several different mediums and made a business out of all of them. but it's never been I have to or I have to keep up. It's always been I'm doing this already and people want it. And the persistence is part stubbornness because I will do nothing but art. Um, almost to a fault.
Yeah.
Because it's really
Right.
the only thing that brings me 100% control, or makes me feel like I'm 100% in control.
Yeah,
That's
It's
interesting.
fun.
that's an interesting observation for sure. I feel the same.
I've actually been I've been doing a lot of VR art myself. I've kind of like fallen into that hole in Gravity Sketch where I'm just like I've put just about like 200 hours into it at this point, and I'm just like I do streams every week where I do like a Pokemon a week in Gravity Sketch. And it's something that like I've never thought like 3D spatially in the same way as when I like started a Gravity Sketch. I used to do just like little like 2D illustrations with like markers and stuff, and I really enjoyed it. But even when I made my first really, really scuffed Charmander in Gravity Sketch, I looked at it and I'm like, this is gonna be it. This is like just this is my chosen medium now. And there's like circling back to the luck aspect. It I also do think that I'm lucky to exist in a time where it's possible because my dad's an engineer. He worked in CAD, like he did a lot of like computer assisted design, worked in like SolidWorks and stuff. And I remember watching him as a kid, and I'm like, wow, this is super cool. But it's also so hard, like looking at all like the measurements and all like putting things in dimensionally, and you like type things in to make things appear. I'm like, I hate that. I would never want to do that. I like the end product, but I hate it. I hate the process. And jumping into Gravity Sketch, it's just like, oh, I make things exist with my hands now. I just
Yeah,
like bring them
that's
into
amazing.
existence. It's very cool.
It's very cool. We have a guy in the workrooms community. His name's Barry, and he's not shy about telling his age. He's like 85 years old, and he also was similar to your dad. He was an architect building stuff in CAD and whatever. And he got into VR. He's been into VR for maybe like 10 years now, from what he said. And just last year, because of Artsy and some of the other people in the community that are into this kind of 3D design, he got into pulling his old designs into like Unity and Blender, and he was able to like walk inside designs he made years
Oh
ago.
my God, I can't
And it was just
imagine.
like, yeah, it was such a trip to see him go on that journey and just like the stuff that he's been able to do. And, it's inspiring for me to see that, and it's really, really interesting. And, while you were talking, I was like, you and Artsy, both like I'm impressed by the kinds of things people are doing with these tools. And as much as I enjoy the medium and the area, I don't feel like I have the persistence to like work on that stuff. Like language learning, I love the idea of language learning, but I don't feel like I have the persistence to sit there and learn it, learn and learn. And with 3D design, like I love seeing it. I'm telling everybody about all the different tools and things that are happening, but I'm not using them because like I don't feel the same drive and persistence in that area. And one thing that was interesting for me was I was just thinking while I was listening to you that there's a book called Mastery by an Aikido master, George Leonard, and he talks about how we show up differently in different things. Like I don't know if you ever heard anybody say it's like how you do anything is how you do everything, or something like that, right? It's not true, but unfortunately, like a lot of us buy into it, like this idea that if you're not a master in one thing, you're never going to master anything. And he talks about the dabbler, and there's a bunch of different archetypes. And I was thinking about that like in the VR space right now, I'm more of a dabbler. I like playing with stuff. I like experimenting. But in my areas of interest, like I am persistent. Like I'm always showing up for community building, helping people, things like that. I'm in my software development stuff. I'm like persistent in that area. And so it's like, it's kind of interesting. Like sometimes you get down on yourself because you're not persistent. you know, maybe in some area, but then you don't look at the, you know, don't look for the areas where you are persistent or consistent. Like, you know, someone like me with ADHD, a lot of times people say we're not consistent. And I jokingly took on the idea years ago now, like, no, I'm consistent. I'm just consistently inconsistent. Like I'm okay with that because I know that's part of who I am, you know, and it's like, but you know, there is a pattern and it's a very clear pattern. So I am consistent, but it just doesn't look consistent to other people because it's not the kind of consistent that they are, right? Like they're consistently doing the same things all the time, you know, on a certain rhythm, and I'm not like that. And so just
Jason,
accepting that, it's interesting.
you reminded me with ADHD, one of the things that I used to say to people before I knew I had it, before I knew,
Yeah.
people said, yeah, you know, I'm such a scatterbrain, you know, I'm so you know, I'm unfocused about things, and I always said, you don't understand at all. I'm
Yeah.
hyper focused. I'm focused too much. I'm just not focused about that. You know,
I
Yeah.
think
when I do
I think
the
a really
thing,
good way.
when I tidy
Oh, I'm so
something
sorry.
up, I could put it in a strange place. Why? Because my brain is somewhere very interesting, and I'm super focused on that.
Yeah. Yep.
I
It's
think
true.
one of the things about ADHD, I just thought about it as you were saying that. It's like, you know, those trash sculptures that like only look like something can be turned just the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like everyone's looking, it's like when we're trying to do things that we're not necessarily focused on at the time, our attention is just total trash. And then if you turn it in the right direction, it's like, oh, this is
Oh
exactly
yeah.
what you're focused on. Like you can see it. I was talking to my girlfriend earlier and she was just like, why don't you take some of that energy that you used to make bugs in VR and go do the dishes? And I'm like, but I can't. I don't have it. Like I
Yeah.
don't. It's not
Yeah.
there. Like I'll do the dishes, but
Yeah.
I'm not gonna have the same drive as I
Yeah.
do in that area. You know.
I
It's
feel the
so hard
exact
to
same way.
explain that. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Artsy.
No, I was just saying I feel the exact same way. I
Yeah.
see all the things that need to be done, but I don't want to do.
Yeah.
But I'm extremely persistent in what it is that I want to do and love to do.
I
Right.
I
Well, I
was
mean, that's the classic ADHD thing for sure. Like that's a classic neurodiversity, you know, quality is like if you know, if you get hooked into it, if you care about it, like in that way, it's hard to let go of it sometimes. And then other stuff when it's like you can care about it, like that's not the thing. Like I always tell my coaching clients because I coach people with ADHD and I say, you know, the problem with even in relationships, it's like it will appear like you don't care about something because you don't do the thing. But the problem is, it's not whether you care about it, it's whether your brain lights up in a certain way about it, you know? And it's like, I can tell you for sure, like I know without a doubt that my brain works differently because when I take this thing called modafinil, it's like it's meant for like narcolepsy and wakefulness. When I take that, I walk by the dishes and I go, I should do those dishes. And I just like turn around and I start doing the dishes. When I don't take those things, I look at the dishes and go, I need to do those dishes. I'll do them later because I go back to the thing I'm interested in doing. And
Right.
I can't disconnect myself from that. It's like a magnetic attraction to the other things that my brain loves doing.
very
And
interesting.
it's like it kind of repels away from those other things.
That's very interesting. I used to well, I joke that so you know these plastic things that you can stick on the kitchen wall and it's like a hook, but you just
Oh yeah.
them and you just like a sticker.
Yeah.
So I bought some of those, and then I was joking, but it's true that um, I created Float and made that company before I was able to bring myself to put those things on the wall. Like it took me longer to put those than
I
to
love
make.
it. I love it. That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But just for
We've been
the
floating for 50 minutes now. That's wild.
yeah. Um, I'll just I just want to share one thing about just to kind of connect what we were just talking about to persistence, and then
Sure.
maybe we can start adjourn. But just yeah, I mean persistence, and that's kind of why I was asking Artsy about like was it fun, was it hard? I think, and somebody said the, you know, whether you like the process or not. I think that's the key, right? I mean, it's very hard to be persistent when you don't like the process, when you don't like the journey itself
Mm,
of doing the thing. It's very hard to say I want that goal, but I hate everything about the
mhm.
and then do it persisting. That's hard.
Yeah, yep, it's true.
Yeah,
I mean, it's true for me. I'll say that. I mean, I know some people that can somehow persist. Like there's Gary V is classic for saying, you know, like you know, just suck it up. Like now he's not saying that as much anymore. I think he's come around to the other way of looking at it. But he's like, you know, you're in your 20s, you know, whatever, suck it up, you know, do the long hours, do the thing just so that you can, you know, so that you can live better in you know the later years or something like that. And I was always like, this advice, I'm not feeling this advice because people get burnt out because they're just pushing themselves to do things they don't like, not even doing stuff you love, but just doing stuff you don't hate would be nice, you know, like like that
Right.
part alone. Yeah.
what an interesting
Yeah, that's
place. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I was about to say like a little ways back actually. I passed through something that I'd never seen before. It was like a museum.
Yeah,
Mm,
we call
Or like some sort of like an observatory. It had like a bunch of like floating artifacts in it and stuff.
yeah. Well,
Very
yeah.
cool.
I love that you called it like a museum because we call it a museum, and that's kind of the function. And actually, last time Archie was here, we were talking about that of maybe putting some of that. So the idea is that we can actually populate it with some stuff that people just, you know, want to show off.
Oh, that's
Oh,
cool.
I love that.
Yeah.
Hmm. That's
So
really cool.
so much stuff to do then, and so little time. Uh, you know, we have so many ideas. Um,
I believe it. It's one of those things like that, you know, every mile you go, there's two more ahead. Like the journey is one that you are enjoying being on, right? So you don't mind that there's more to do. In fact, you wish you could get there faster, you know, like it's fun. Yeah.
like somebody said it was a stand-up artist, I can't remember who. Um, they said if you have if you're looking at the clock and it's moving too slowly, you
Mhm.
have a job. If it's moving too fast, you have a career.
That's interesting.
I I actually ended up running into that situation when I was like, I would wake up like super early, like a couple of years ago when I was driving Uber. I would wake up super early and I would go on a walk, and I would be able to tell when my heart rate was up by when certain songs would come on, and I'm like, this sounds slow. Like it sounds slower than normal, and that means that my heart is beating faster, which means that I'm experiencing time faster,
Wow.
and vice versa. Like
Uh,
if you have like a song that like has a steady, like Daft Punk is great. They've got like literally just like beat. Like it's like you can meter it out. But if you listen to the same song, it's like this seems like really super slow. You know that your heart rate's up and you're like either excited about what you're working on or you have like an adrenaline rush.
That's super interesting. Never.
Hmm. It's just
yeah.
something that I experienced when I was doing that. I'm like, wow, this is weird that I can actually like tell. But yeah.
That's really cool. I used to have the Muse meditation headband. I don't know if you've seen that before, but it's like it's basically headgear that has like a heart rate monitor and some other brain sensing stuff on it. And my favorite one was the one where they have one where the music speeds up and slows down based on your heart rate. So it kind of like shows you that your heart rate is going up, and so then you try to breathe deeply to kind of slow your heart rate. And it's very cool, just like feedback loop, you know, like I can feel I can sense my heart rate speeding up because the music is going starts going faster, and then
Right.
you breathe deeply and it slows back down again. And that feedback loop was really helpful to try to learn how to calm your heart rate, because you know you could practice it. You could say, okay, doing this slows my heart rate down. Doing this speeds it back up. When I start thinking, all of a sudden my heart rate goes back up. If I like disconnect from all those thoughts, it slows down. It's very interesting, and I can't wait till the head, like, I can't wait till the VR and AR and brain sensing and, you know, brain technology stuff, you know, all intertwines. It'll
Yeah.
be really interesting to have all that together.
New ideas, speaking of all the ideas we
Yeah.
have to float, of course, right? You know, once we have,
Yeah.
you know, once we connect it to biofeedback, which is on the roadmap, it's not
Yeah.
even very difficult, it just needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, then we would be able to, because we can actually control this thing in real time, we'll be able to actually make sure that we react to how your body reacts to this. So
Yeah. It's amazing.
I think we should start closing.
Mhm.
I'd like to say, first of all, Nathan, if you want to do another guided float, we can do
Yeah,
that.
I'm always down for that.
Okay, cool.
How's
So
everybody for time too?
what's
You
that?
good for, I just
I'm
wondering how
okay.
everybody is for time. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
So I'll just say a few things before that, and then we can.
Okay.
One thing is, first of all, thank you everybody for coming and for being here and for having this conversation. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did as well. I also want to say, speaking of persistence and enjoying the sort of the process, I'm hoping that using float is helping with that. I know that for me, going into doing mindfulness and stuff like that, that was one of those things that it's hard for me to persist with because I don't like the process actually. Whereas with this, I can, and maybe it's gonna end up being like you know, training wheels for the bike. You know, after I do it for a while, maybe I can do it without. We'll see. So yeah, hopefully this is helpful. Um, and I wanted to ask everybody if you'd be okay for me to put it on YouTube as a public thing. If not, that's absolutely fine. Is there anybody that doesn't like the idea?
I'm good with it.
That's fine by me. Yeah.
Okay, great. So that's cool. It would be interesting to kind of see this as almost like a podcast
Yeah.
where people can listen and look at flow landscapes. Yeah, and that's it. That's it for me. Thanks everybody. Oh, and Fraser, welcome aboard. And I'd love to later, maybe you can write, you know, what you thought and what, you know, how you felt about it all.
Cool.
All right,
That's great.
take it away.
Cool. Is everybody floating where they want to be floating? We'll do like, what do you want to do, during like 5 minutes or something?
Yeah, something like
Or
that.
shorter?
It's up to you entirely. Just, you know, I wouldn't go over about 5 minutes because it's kind of late.
Okay. All right, let's do then. We'll just do like up to 5 minutes. If you want to drop off before then, feel free to drop off. And in the meantime, get into a float, whatever one you feel is good for you. If you're in like Energize or something, it might be a little different because there's different kinds of objects and speed, but I'll try to just make it more abstract so it can work with anything. And I'm not going to get into big breathing exercises because I don't really enjoy that so much myself when people do it. But I will say, let's just take, I always love to start with just one nice deep breath, sink into whatever you're floating through, and enjoy. And I'll try to guide you a little bit and leave you some space to do your own floating. So yeah, one deep breath, and my only guidance on that is just try to do it as slow in and as slow out as you can, because that calms the nervous system. So and then just as you float, maybe just start with a wide angle view of just the whole area you're floating through. Notice the different colors, shapes, and speed. It's interesting how you can see movement even if you're not looking at it. Maybe you see some things kind of wiggling or spinning or off to the side. And then what's interesting about float is even things that aren't moving themselves, because we're moving, we're always in motion. There's some sort of motion, even when things are still. It's kind of interesting with the theme today, persistence, you know. We're persistently floating through float. We have no choice in the matter, or we're just floating. We're just moving forward all the time. And I want you to take a second to notice something that you may not normally notice in float. Look for the shadows. Don't look at the objects, but look at the shadows of the objects. There might be only a few, or there might be a lot of shadows, depending on what part of float you're in. But just notice where the light source is kind of on something. And then like wonder, what is this light source that's creating the shadows? And now pick up a random object into the way into the future of where you're going to be in your float. Choose any object. If you don't like the one you saw first, don't worry, pick a different one. And then just notice it coming towards you or beside you. Does your float seem to slow down when you focus this way, or does it speed up? Either one of those is good or bad, just noticing. And that's up to you. Do you want to wait for that object to get to where you are? Or do you want to change your focus to somewhere else? I'll give you a minute. And if you can believe it, we've already been floating for 5 minutes. Just before we quit, I want you to do something. Just look straight up, slowly, tip your head upwards and look straight up. And then slowly come back to center again. Thanks for floating with me.
Nice.
Thank you. That was great.